Thanks everyone. Councillors and visitors, please remember to switch your electronic devices to silent. And welcome everybody in the gallery, and also of course welcome to the viewers who are at home watching the meeting via the live stream. I'll now ask you all please if you can be upstanding, and if the Deputy Mayor Bianca Sandri could read the opening prayer. Thanks.
Almighty God, we ask you to guide us in all our discussions to show goodness, honesty, understanding and wisdom in all that we undertake to do. May we respect each other's views at all times, and we ask all of this in your name.
And if I could ask you to remain standing, Councillor Caddy, could you please read out the acknowledgement of country?
On behalf of councillors, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, on which this meeting is taking place, and show our respects for elders past, present and emerging.
Thank you very much. If you can all take your seats. Please note that without prior approval, any recording of this meeting is prohibited, and members of the public should note that no action should be taken on any resolution of council prior to written advice from the city being received. That now brings us to item 1, which is the official opening. Ladies and gentlemen, I declare the council meeting of the 17th of November 2020 open at 7 p.m. Item 2, attendance and apologies, I have nil. Item 3, approved leave of absence, I have nil. Item 4, disclosure of interest. And the following disclosure of interest have been received. Councillor Bianca Sandri disclosed an impartial interest in item 12.2 PS1 as she had met with residents on site. Myself disclosed an impartial interest in item 12.2 PRS1 as I am an honorary member of the North Beach Bowls Club. Councillor Karen Caddy disclosed an impartial interest in item 12.2 PRS1 as she is an honorary member of the North Beach Bowls Club. Councillor Suzanne Migdale disclosed an impartial interest in item 12.2 GOV2 as she is a candidate in the forthcoming state election. Councillor Chris Hatton disclosed an impartial interest in item 12.2 9.1 as he is a friend of the requester. Councillor Adam Spagnolo disclosed an impartial interest in item 12.2 9.1 as one of the families is known to him. Councillor David Lagan disclosed an impartial interest in 12.2 9.3 as he works for the Department of Education. We've also received one on item 14.1, a nom from Councillor Caddy, and it's a financial interest as a family member works. This is from Councillor Ferrandi. The family member works for the company. Also received one from the CEO, Stuart Jardine, disclosed a financial interest in item 18.1 as the item relates to the CEO employment contract. Councillors, are there any other disclosures you wish to put forward? If not, I'll move on. Item 5, petitions. No petitions have been received by the City. Councillors, do you have any unverified petitions this evening? There's no indication. Item 6, responses to previous questions from members of the public taken on notice, and all questions from the previous council meeting were published in the minutes of that meeting. Item 7, public question time, and we will now move on to public question time and start by calling yourself, Mr. Andre Dines, up.
Yes, motion just before we do, so you don't have to keep asking for extensions.
Right, list. Right, sorry, just before we start, Mr. Dines, you can stay up there. Could I, councillors, please have a recommendation that in accordance with clause 5.712 of the City of Stirling's Meeting Procedures Local Law 2009, public question time be extended for the time needed to respond to all questions from members of the public who have registered. Councillor Migdale moves, seconded Councillor Sandri. Just a show of hands quickly, councillors. That is unanimous. Thanks, councillors. Sorry for that, Mr. Dines. If you'd just like to state your name and your suburb, and then off you go.
My name is Andre Dines from Burrows Road, Carrinup. Good evening, Mayor, councillors and staff. My 3 questions tonight relate to the Carrinup Shopping Centre redevelopment. My first question. It is understood that the proposed high-rise development on the western boundary of the Carrinup Shopping Centre proposes to remove all but 3 existing street trees along Burrows Road, or trees within their property boundary. There are currently 4 mature trees in the corresponding area, plus another 2 on the corner of Burrows Road and Davenport Street that have been earmarked with tape, possibly for their imminent removal. It is understood that the proposed high-rise, even if approved, is still several years away from construction commencing. The current development proposal shows approximately 15 street trees being planted in the road verge between the footpath and the road. To assist in minimising the impact of this development, whether it be the original 4 stories the community advised of, or the current proposal of 9, 15 and 24 stories, could the City and/or require UniSuper and AMP Capital please plant these new street trees now, as the additional years of maturity will assist in improving the streetscape and assist in reducing the direct impact albeit only slightly, on neighbouring residential properties?
Yes, Mr Dines, and two parts to the question. The first one is just to confirm the yellow ribbons on those trees currently is not earmarked for cutting down. That's Western Power markings. They're currently just doing pruning, so they're under the power lines. So we have checked up on that one, and we'll certainly take on board your comments and follow up with AMP regarding the street tree planting.
Thank you. Question 2. To assist the local Karrinyup residents understand the visual and privacy impacts of the proposed 9, 15 and 24-storey Western residential development proposed by Uni Super and AMP Capital, can the City please confirm if the growth of these proposed trees to be planted within the Burrows Road Road Reserve will be impacted and or restricted by the overhead power lines? If so, what is their anticipated maximum height, or will these power lines be relocated underground?
Mr Littleton, are you able to? We might have to respond to you in writing. Mr Roddick?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thanks, Mr Dines, for the question. As part of this development application, the power lines proposed to be removed, so there would be no impact on street trees should they be planted in the future by the City.
Mr Dines?
Thank you. It's good news. Question 3. Further to my email request to the Mayor and Coastal Ward councillors about a week and a half ago, can the Mayor please confirm if the City will or has approached UniSuper and or AMP or Multiplex Direct to request that their staff park at the vacant site known as East Village until this site is required for the construction commencement of the proposed residential apartments? It is understood that this area is still under the control of Multiplex, and there seems to be no reason why their construction staff could not or should not park there. This would greatly assist residents and ratepayers in the neighbouring streets who have had enough of the appalling and dangerous parking situation at present in their residential streets, verges, vacant blocks and reserves.
Thank you. Mr Roddick?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. The City recognises, Mr Dines, that parking for construction workers is a real concern for the local community. I've spoken to one of the representatives today from the project management team, and they will consider if there's an opportunity to park on that land. They expect to get back to me in the next 48 hours, and I'll make sure that I provide that to you in writing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lynn Noack, please. Thank you. Just your name and your suburb.
Good evening, Lynn Noack, Karrinyup. Thank you for that answer, Mr Roddick, because my question obviously follows on from there. Because I was going to say, all of this year, the local residents have been subjected to very dangerous and irregular parking, particularly in the streets of Wincanton, Somerton, Elworthy and Burrows. My question relates to the past precedents of the City Council to actually fine Christmas shoppers at the end of the year when they park on the verge or in the streets in this vicinity. I know that for a fact because some of those fines actually blow into my garden, and I've actually phoned the council on a number of occasions to say I have them in my possession. So it does actually, or it has occurred. I'd actually like to know, why is the council not fining these parkers, these drivers of these cars that are parked irregularly, especially given a lot of them are parked on the verge under signs, especially this afternoon, that say no standing or parking at any time?
Mr Quirk?
Through you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question. The City's security, parking and rangers do patrol the area and are generally in the area around Karrinyup Shopping Centre on a daily basis. They do make a judgment call as to whether to provide a verbal caution, a written caution or issue an infringement depending on the circumstances. I can confirm since the 1st of August, 70 caution notices and 32 infringements have been issued, and at any time residents can contact the City and rangers or parking inspectors will assist and attend as soon as possible.
Thank you. Can I just note it's had no impact?
Yes, yes you can. Point taken, Mrs Noack. Peter Ellis. Good evening, Mr Ellis. Your name and your suburb, please.
Good evening, Mr Mayor. Peter Ellis in Corrine. Good evening, councillors, and good evening, staff and fellow ratepayers. Can you please advise what are the financial liabilities if the council does not renew the current CEO's contract with the 12-month notice condition in the 5-year contract, please?
The City CEO isn't up for renewal currently, but I'll get Ms Hawkins to provide you an answer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Mr Ellis. There would effectively be no financial liability. The contract would just run its course.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you for the information on number 273 West Coast Highway, and advise what is the current value of the council-owned lot with the potential of an 18-storey hotel? Please.
Mr Littleton?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr Ellis. Look, we currently have not done an assessment of the value of lot 273 with that built form outcome. Council has currently resolved to lodge a DA over this site for use as a temporary car park. That's obviously been the subject of a number of questions we've had so far.
Yes. No, I was just asking the actual value of the plot at the moment with the potential of the 18-storey building. Okay, thank you.
We can certainly find it out for you and provide a response in writing, Mr Ellis.
Fantastic, thank you. What funds have been reserved for the payments to all 13 employees with a 5-year contract and the condition of the 12 months notice?
Thank you. Ms Hawkins?
Be none.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, correct, Mr Ellis. So we don't hold funds in reserve.
Right, thank you very much, Mr Mayor, councillors.
Thank you, Mr Ellis. Jeff Newman, please. Mr Newman, your name and your suburb.
Jeff Newman, and I live in Gwelup. Good evening, Mr Mayor and fellow councillors. Now that the management plan is about to be adopted by the council, which I might add is a welcome addition, seeing the plan is over 2 years old, can the council assure me that a variety of options will be considered by the council during the implementation stages of this plan?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Can the council please tell me what kind of structure is planned for the access of workers to the island in the middle of the Kareniup wetlands? At the moment, it is just a squiggle on a management plan. In other words, what will the structure look like? For example, will it be wooden or concrete? Will it be permanent, or will it be a collapsible device for use by the designated workers? And most importantly, will a variety of ideas be considered by the council, and will these ideas be presented to the ratepayers?
Yes, my understanding, Mr Newman, is that it will form part of the discussions tonight. Obviously, it was contentious at the Community and Resource Committee. I know the ward council has been looking at that with other councillors, and they'll be putting forward an alternative rec to give some surety that it's to access the island only, and the materials, etc., haven't been designed yet, but that'll take into account minimal impact to the area.
Thank you very much. Could I request that I receive written answers, please?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you.
Andrea Colthart, please. Thank you.
Good
Just your
evening.
name and suburb, thanks.
Yeah, good evening. My name's Andrea Colthart. I live in Gwelup. I just wanted to start by saying that after 2 years working on this, the Kareniup Wetlands Community Group wants the management plan endorsed. However, a key issue of contention in the current plan remains the island bridge crossing that is still in the plan, and I have 3 questions relating to this tonight. Firstly, the Kareniup Wetlands Community Group understands that the city needs to access the island for effective weed and habitat control. Bearing in mind that the distance between the mainland and the island is 2 to 3 metres in several locations surrounding the island, have alternative, non-permanent ways to service the island been considered and investigated? And if so, what are they, and why were they not included in the management plan?
Sure. Mr Littleton?
Look, we've certainly considered the need to access the island for conservation purposes. Our goal is to, we do believe that that the current method of trying to access the island is not effective, doesn't meet our safety requirements, and a more permanent structure is necessary to enable us to effectively access the island to undertake weed management. We have obviously listened to the community's feedback. We understand the concerns around general access to the island through some other means. So we have stipulated that we would be looking to ensure that we restrict access across any structure that we place to enable just maintenance only.
Thank you. At last week's Community and Resources Committee meeting, a question was asked by a councillor as to how many bodies of water in the City of Stirling that have islands have bridge access, but there was no response. Could Council please advise how many bodies of water in the city that have islands have bridge access?
Yeah. Mr Littleton? Mr Hunter?
Mr Mayor, I don't have those details on me, but I'm happy to provide those
Thank you.
on
So we'll
notice.
provide you that response in writing.
Thank you. My third question. Councillors will be aware that the plan identifies private parcels of land that will be ceded to the city within the life of this management plan, and that once these are in the city's control, a pedestrian circuit of the reserve will be accessible. Why then is an expensive East-West Island pedestrian bridge being included in the plan, still included in the plan, to aid pedestrian access to the island into the overall path network as identified on page 35 of the plan?
I guess the answer is quite simple, and it's been asked previously tonight. It's that all options will be considered, and it's important that there are lots of options on the table, but that item is up for discussion tonight, and council will decide if there is that access or not.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bronwyn Croft, please. Is there a Bronwyn Croft? No. Is there a Sarah Coleman? Is there... Oh, yes, there is. Sorry. Use your name and suburb, please.
Sarah Coleman from Karrinyup. I asked a question tonight, but I'm quite happy to have the answer via email.
Sure.
Okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good.
Roland Hadley. Mr Hadley, your name and suburb.
Good evening all. Roland Hadley, Woodlands. On behalf of the Ewan Street Community Group, has any development application been made by the owner/developer of the land that lies south of Scarborough Beach Road and Ewan Street East, named as Southern Sub-Precinct A? Has the City of Stirling made any contact with the owner in the past 6 weeks or so?
Mr Roddick, are you aware of that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Hadley, I'm not aware of an application put forward, but I'm happy to take that on notice and provide you some commentary back in that regard.
Thank you.
You're referring to the triangle, the hole, the large hole?
Yeah,
Yes.
yes, right.
Yes.
The woodland sand pit, basically.
Yeah.
Will the city publish an updated list of companies, organisations that managers, directors, CEO, mayor and councillors have a financial connection with or interest in?
Yeah. Manager of Governance, Mr Blanchard, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to give you some background on the requirements for employees and elected members. All elected members and delegated employees are required to lodge a primary return when they start with the city and an annual return each year that lists those details. In addition, under the financial regulations, key management personnel must list all those organisations that they have an interest in each year. Recent changes to the regulations that govern the returns mean that we must publish on our website from now the date on which each elected member and employee has lodged those returns with the city.
Mr Hadley.
Third question. On the 15th of October, I read that WALGA, the West Australian Local Government Association, was paid $870. The brief invoice details were advertising and media buy. Through the chair, can the financial department provide a further comprehensive explanation?
Ms Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Mr Hadley. I think that would be for advertising in terms of tender submissions, but I will check that and provide that in writing to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Hadley. Susan Watts. What's your name and suburb, please?
Good evening, I'm Susan Watts and I'm from Gwelup. My questions are around getting to the island from the mainland, from the wetlands. But basically we'd like to say that the Karrinyup Wetlands community are delighted that the Community and Resources Committee voted to close the secret garden and to maintain it as a conservation area. Please note that this is just as important to us as keeping any access to the breeding island at a minimum, that being for professional maintenance only. Front of mind, I refer to Mr Littleton's response to Mayor Irwin's question of how often the city would require island access. The response was regular access. Would Council please advise what regular access equates to?
Yes, is that Mr Hunter? Yeah. Mr Hunter?
Mr Mayor, I can confirm that the island is 5,000 square metres of very degraded habitat. There's a substantial amount of weeds over the island. We can't define exactly what the frequency of maintenance is, but it will be not only an effort to restore the habitat, but there'll be ongoing maintenance as a result of that effort. So it will be ongoing for some time.
Ms Watts?
Okay, thank you. On page 35 of the management plan, it states that rather than installing maintenance access only and having control to unauthorised access onto the island, the proposal is to combine maintenance and pedestrian access to the island in the overall path network. Given the results of the 2 rounds of public consultation that indicate that the east-west island crossing is not desired, and the discussion at last week's Community and Resources Committee meeting that the bridge would be for maintenance access only, can Council please confirm that the access to the island is only for maintenance access and not pedestrian access, and that the plan will be amended to ensure this?
Sure, and I can't confirm that at the moment. Obviously, it's an item that's coming up to Council tonight, and that will be for Council decision, but certainly the recommendation from committee had that intent.
Okay, well, so basically it really is imperative that we, the community, inform councillors and officers that we place that the importance of placing no permanent access to the breeding island. The less disturbance, the better. With a permanent structure, how can council guarantee unwanted cats or pedestrian traffic?
Just a question, please.
Sorry, okay. Is there some way that we can access to achieve not having a permanent structure? Maybe we could have a drawbridge or something.
The council will certainly consider that, and officers have heard your comments and certainly understand what you're getting at there.
Thank you.
Winifred McCormick. Thank you. Just your name and your suburb, please.
Winifred McCormick, carrying up. Good evening, councillors and ratepayers. My question is about the Carrying Up Shopping Centre. The height of the apartments that are being,
Proposed, yes.
Yep. I'd like to confirm could you confirm the numbers for me, please?
Yes, Mr Roddick.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Mr McCormack. If you're referring to the towers, in terms of the numbers, there was 24 stories,
Yes.
15 stories and a 9-storey tower.
So 3 towers.
Thank you very much.
And Karen Burbridge, please. Thank you. Just your name and your suburb, thank you.
Karen Burbridge, Gwelup. These may have been covered to a large degree, but I will push on all the same. Question 1, all in respect to the Correniup Wetlands Management Plan. Question 1, is the City concerned that it is perhaps being environmentally irresponsible by constructing bridges and concrete path intrusions in, through and across the fragile wetlands? And is it possible to remove such structures from the plan?
And again, I would say 2 parts to that. No, I don't think what's being proposed is irresponsible in terms of the wetlands, but it's certainly an item on the agenda this evening. Council will take in board the comments.
Thanks. Question 2. Is the City aware and concerned that many diseases and foreign species could be introduced into the wetlands, as well as additional rubbish and pollution, if people and animals ventured off proposed new paths that lead to proposed bridges within the wetlands? And that perimeter areas/paths would be easier to maintain and would lessen the negative impact on the wetlands?
Thank you. Mr Hunter, are you able to provide a response?
Mr Mayor, certainly Council has considered the environmental impacts with any structures, and if there were to be maintenance access to the island, which is proposed, obviously the environmental considerations and impacts of pests and diseases would be uppermost in our mind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question 3. Given that it has been acknowledged that it will take much money and effort to restore the wetlands, is it reasonable and possible to prioritise the funding into restoration rather than using it for building unnecessary and unwanted bridges, concrete paths and parking bays?
Yes, it is definitely possible to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. That's all I have on my list. Have I missed anyone? Thank you very much, everyone. We will move on then to item 8, and these are applications for leave of absence. Councillors, are there any requests for a leave of absence? No indication. I'll go on to item 9, confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder to accept the council minutes of the 27th of October 2020? Councillor Hatton moving, Councillor Spagnolo seconding. Anyone opposed? No, I'll put that to the vote. Just show of hands quickly, councillors. That is good. And hands down and against, Councillor Ree. So all councillors in favour, Councillor Ree is against. That is carried. Item 10, announcements by the presiding member. I have nil. Item 11, unresolved business from previous meetings. I have nil. Item 12, reports and recommendations from committees. Councillors will now move on to audit committee items. Councillors, are there any items wish to be pulled out this evening? Councillor Ree?
Yes, thank you. May I pull out, and it doesn't need to be confidential, 12.1 1A2 on page 20, please.
Yes, you may. Is there any other indication? Sorry, it's 12, yes, so 12.1 CG2 has to be pulled out as it's an alt rec as well. So let's move to item 12.1 IA2. Councillor Ree has pulled it out. Let's go. Is it just because you have a question, Councillor Ree? Or?
No, my point is I'm opposing it because...
Okay, well, let's go to the committee sorry, I'll just go through the process then. It's just made it sound like it was only a quick question. Councillor Lagan, as Chair of the Audit Committee, you're moving.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll move the officer's recommendation on page 20.
Thank you. A seconder for that motion, please. Councillor Migdale. Opposed. Councillor Ree. Councillor Lagan.
Nothing to add. I think it was covered at committee well.
Thank you. Councillor Migdale.
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ree.
Thank you. As I alluded to on committee, I am concerned with regard to the auditing of the records management and freedom of information issues, because when I look at the motions, as the City of Stirling does have motions, this council makes motions. Under the Local Government Act, these motions, which are now could be 150 years old, 50 years old, wherever, should be actually found easily on the net. With the changes that occurred in recent times, only things are on the net from 2014. So when staff are researching information, and I'll take the example about the glyphosate, which is actually in this report, they didn't go back to when this council already said that glyphosate should be phased out. So when we're looking, even though the Records Act says things must be kept for 7 years, Local Government Act says you must be able to find them. I know myself, when I've tried to ask for things, they said it was erroneous, could take 20 days, 20 years to find things. So I do believe that under our records management, that the ratepayers of the City of Stirling, the councillors and the staff should have accessibility to the motions from this table so that it's easily found. That wasn't brought up in the audit. I'm still concerned that we are not having those resolutions available to everybody, and it also makes it easier for staff to do research. It makes it easier for the community to know what this council was thinking, because if we change it every 7 years, then nobody knows why people in the past made decisions. And bearing in mind, sometimes as we look at Up Swamp, a lot of these things take 3 or 4 years to come to fruition, and then you get a new council and then they're not considering what was already in the flow. So it concerns me that the auditing, that I believe that the auditing of this should be in here, and that with regard to the Local Government Act and the State Records Act, they do overlap, but they do take precedence because it's part of our accountability and transparency.
Thank you, Councillor, and you made that point at committee as well. Is there anyone else who'd like to debate? If not, I will go to Councillor Lagan. We'd like to close debate.
Yeah, I need to say that it was debated at committee at some length. There doesn't appear to be deficiencies in the process. There is still FOI capability for individuals outside of council, or indeed officers if they wish to seek FOI. And the records retention is covered in the Act also. So there's nothing missing and there's nothing being left out. I understand what Councillor Ree is saying with regard to council activity that may have happened a number of years ago, but we're talking about council now. And given that Councillor Ree's been on council a long time, she could well be a source of that information herself.
A font of knowledge. And with that, that closes debate. So I will put that item to the vote. If you can go to your votes, please, councillors. Councillor Lagan to vote. That's it. Thank you, councillors. And that motion is carried. And for we have councillors Boothman, Caddy, Ferrante, Hatton, Lagan, Migdale, Perkov, Proud, Sandry, Sargent, Spagnolo, Thornton and myself, and against councillors Farrelly and councillor Reid. Now go to item 12.1 CG2. This is a review of the City of Stirling Risk Management Framework. There's a alt rec on the memo. Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, thank you. I'll move the officer's recommendation. I note the alt rec on the memo that was distributed to all elected members.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for this motion, please? Councillor Caddy, is there anyone opposed? If not, I'll put that motion. Go to the vote, please, councillors. And just one to go. I think someone's gone the question mark.
Just
Sorry?
confirm that we've moved the one that was in the white paper memo, please?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
the one on the...
The alt rec, the memo. And that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. That does bring us to the balance of reports. Councillor Lagan, would you like to move the balance of reports, please?
Yeah, move the balance of the reports.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sandry. I'll go to the vote, please, councillors. Proud and Spagnolo, I think it is. Councillors, can you just check, make sure you're casting your votes? Councillor Farrelly? Thank you. That is unanimous. Members of the gallery, those at home, please be advised that the remainder of the Audit Committee recommendations have been adopted by exception resolution. We will now move on to the Community and Resources Committee. There are two items that have to be pulled out. They are 12.2 PS1, the Kareniup Wetlands, and 12.2 CS1, the City of Stirling and Wudjuk Northside Corporation Agreement. Both of those need an absolute majority. That's why they're being pulled out. Are there any other items that need to be pulled out? Councillor Farrelly.
I'd like to pull out the long-term cycling network, just for a question more than anything else. And
Sure. Whereabouts is it?
12.2. Oh, sorry, page 137.
Oh, right at the stop. Thanks.
And look, I'll leave the other one. Just that one will do.
Thank you. And I did miss one. 12.2 GOV3, the elected member policies on 355 needs an absolute majority vote as well. Councillor Lagan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I please have item 12.2 GOV1 on page 321?
Thank you. 12.2 GOV1, that is on 321. Councillor Sandry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I please pull out 12.29.3, page 415? Thank you.
The strategic direction of Mount Lawley. Yep. When we get to that, if you can just let us know if that can be dealt with. Councillor Sandry. When we get to that, if you can just let us know if that can be dealt with. It's confidential, so. Great. Oh, Councillor Caddy.
12.2 GOV2. I believe we have a white paper alt rec on that as well.
Thanks, Councillor. Great, okay. Now, yes, let's go, we might as well go from the start. We'll get to Kareniup very quickly. 12.2 ES1, the long-term cycling network results of consultation. Do I have a motion, please, Councillor Migdale from the committee?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the committee's recommendation, please, on page 137.
Great. Councillor Farrelly, did you want to just second that with a question? Was it just a question you had? Or do you want to debate it?
No, I think I'll just make it as a question because
It's not up for debate,
I'll
but if
stand
you'd
up.
like to just if you second it.
Yes, I'll second
with
it.
a question.
And I'll have a question as well.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Is there anyone opposed? You are opposed? Okay, Councillor Reid, so go to you, Councillor Migdale.
Nothing at this time.
Councillor Farrelly.
The question I had with the bicycle routes, I haven't got it in front of me now because I pulled it out. In terms of the long-term plan, that the roads, I understand, can be changed depending on community consultation. Does that still hold?
Yes, Mr Littleton? Yes. Yes.
Right, thanks.
Great. Councillor Ree?
Thank you. Well, pardon me. While I support the bicycle strategy and it's a state government initiative, $39 million, a lot of it is coming back to local government to implement. We've already seen some of the areas that are not done in accordance with, say, the wishes of the community. I think it's very good that we've actually got some of the comments in here, especially 3, that we didn't want to change things, and I think it's important to have the advisory group. However, my concern is that, unfortunately, it's not in the report, but Councillor Thornton alluded to, is that it equates to $8.86 per capita on cycling infrastructure. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but when we have 250,000 ratepayers, you know, that's a lot of money we're spending on bicycles that aren't really contributing back to the road.
So can I just clarify a couple of things? One is, I think that it's a valid point that you have, but it's very different than this item. This item is just noting a strategy. And I think in actual fact, you'll find that Councillor Thornton asking that question was probably thinking the opposite to you, in terms of it not being enough. But I just don't think, what you're talking about is a budget item. This is not committing any funds and not committing the city to build anything. This is just noting the state government cycle network strategy. Yep.
Well, if we look at page 141, we've also, even though it says in there that we've got no financial implications, in the budget we actually do have an implication. I think it's over the last 6 years.
But again, Councillor, that's completely unrelated to this item. So all this item is a long-term cycle network. It's a strategy.
Yeah,
All we're doing is noting it. All this does is give us access to funds, so it costs the city less money if we want to access it.
I realise that, but what I'm saying is that even though we're noting something, we're agreeing with the strategy, we want changes in it, it's still a financial implication that should have been written into this report. You know, I think that's important. It's an ongoing thing in the budget. It should be written in here. Even if it's noting we are part of the cycling strategy, it is costing the ratepayers money, and therefore it should be written in this report.
Thanks, Councillor.
That's my point.
Noted. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this item? If not, I'll go to Councillor Migdale to close debate.
Nothing further.
Thank you. With that, I'll put that one to the vote, please, councillors. And that, we got one more, Lagan. Sorry, Councillor Lagan. That is unanimous. Thanks, councillors. We'll now go on to the item you've all been waiting for, item 12.2, PS1, the Kareniup Wetlands Reserve Management Plan. An absolute majority vote is required, and it has been the subject of a petition. The recommendation on page 159, Councillor Migdale, as chair of that committee.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to hand over to Councillor Perkov, please.
Councillor Perkov, is it the committee recommendation?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor and Madam Chair. Can I move the committee recommendation? I think it's on page 160, actually, isn't it?
Could well be.
Yeah, it's changed again, has it? No. I think it's 160. Can I move that to recommend the committee recommendation with an additional recommendation?
As long as the additional one doesn't change the intent.
I don't think it changes the intent, but it definitely adds a whole lot of surety to the concerns expressed, Mr Mayor.
Okay, so the additional part of that, which was probably the original intent of your motion, was that the Kareniup Island be designated a wildlife refuge and the maintenance island crossing be designed in such a way to prevent general access to the public. Thank you. That is your motion.
That is my motion. I'll be happy with that.
Seconder,
Thank you.
Councillor
Second.
Hatton. Yep, you can sit down, Councillor Perkov. Yep, just put your mic on, Councillor Hatton, and say yes. Yes. Yes, second. Good, good. Okay, is anyone opposed to this? We can put these separately. I think we have to put them all separately, I believe. Let me just check. No, I was getting some dodgy advice from the CEO there. We can just put number 6 separately. You're happy just to leave it? Okay, so we'll leave it. There is no one.
Yes, if we can put number 6 separately.
We could put number 6 separately. So what we're going to do is I'm just wondering if we should just deal with this as number 6 as an amendment and see if it, and then just put it as a substantive. Would that be? No, just do it this way. Okay. I'll take your counsel on that. Okay, so councillors, we will now put that to the vote. So we're dealing with item 1.5, which was the original recommendation. Just 1 to 5, so 1 to 5 inclusive. Thank you. That is unanimous, councillors. And we'll now go to item 6, which was the addition I just read out. There we go. And if we can just go to the vote on item 6 only, please. Okay, we've just got Councillor Proud, Sandri and Spagnola, I think. Ferrante, Sandri. It's the same as when I just read it. Great. Okay, I think we now have it. That motion is carried. Just making sure it's an absolute. Yep. So before we have Councillors Boothman, Ferrante, Hatton, Lagan, Migdale, Perkoff, Proudry and myself, and against Councillors Caddy, Farrelly, Sandri, Sargent, Spagnolo and Thornton. That motion is carried. That is now done. Those members of the gallery, thank you for your patience for the last couple of years. It was a good process. It meant you got involved. Thank you. We'll now go on to item 12.2, CS1, the City of Stirling and Whadjuk Northside Aboriginal Community Cooperation Agreement. An absolute majority vote is required on this one. Councillor Migdale, could you please move the committee's recommendation, page 201?
And I'll move the committee's, happy to move the committee's recommendation, thank you.
Councillor Boothman's happy to second that. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, so I will put that item, councillors. Okay, we've got a few to go. Perkoff, Ree and Hatton. Thank you, councillors. That is unanimous. We'll now go on to item 12.2, GOV1, proposed confidentiality of council business policy. Councillor Lagan, you've withdrawn that. It's on page 321. Councillor Migdale as chair of the committee.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Happy to move the committee's recommendation.
And a seconder. Councillor Caddy, opposed. Councillor Lagan. Councillor Migdale.
Nothing at this time. I think the debate was robust at committee.
Thank you. Councillor Caddy.
Yeah, nothing further to add.
Councillor Lagan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The debate was robust and I was maybe a little disorganised, so look, I'm opposed to this, and let me be clear from the outset. This new policy seeks to suggest that there isn't a policing document that already covers confidential information at council and the sharing of information with parties who may or may not be privy to the information due to contractual or financial considerations. This policy is seeking to repeat portions of our local laws and the Local Government Act WA, which already make the definition of confidential item very clear, and the listing of the item or items also clear. Those items for commercial or financial reasons are to be deemed confidential by the CEO or the council or both, and are to exclude the general public and the sharing of that information by city staff and elected members. Unless it's specifically necessary to disclose said information by an elected member to seek legal advice or to inform the local government minister of concerns. The City of Stirling Local Laws 5.23 deals with confidentiality of information withheld. S 5.23 of the Local Government Act WA does the same. 3.2.4 confidentiality, page 21 of the City of Stirling Governance Framework also covers the issue in detail. The issue arose in response to a council resolution 0319/093, which sought an investigation of improved processes for managing deputations on confidential items. The reality is there is no need to beef up any portion of how the city or CEO or the council deals with deputations or confidential meetings or part of council or committee meetings which are deemed confidential by the CEO. Why? Because when listed as confidential, that is what they are. They are not open, and they are not open for community deputations at any time, as they've been deemed confidential. 3.2.4, confidentiality, page 21, of the City of Stirling Governance Framework clearly states, councillors and employees must handle information held by the City in a way that maintains public trust and confidence in our integrity. The CEO is required under the Local Government Act 1995 and now revised to ensure that proper management of city records and documents as such is held accountable for ensuring that any requests, whether from councillors, employees or external parties, for information held by the City will be dealt with according to law. So if an officer invites a member of the public to speak to an item which has already been listed as confidential and is to be dealt with at a closed portion of a meeting under confidentiality, then the CEO is responsible for the breach or is responsible for any breach by an officer. For newly elected members, this council resolution came as a result of a case in which a confidential item that was dealing with a portion of land listed for POS and was listed as confidential. At that confidential meeting, an officer had erroneously invited the landowner to comment at the meeting. The item could not be discussed openly, and the CEO was responsible for the breach of the confidentiality by the officer and responsible to act against that officer using the appropriate portions of City HR and employment laws and policies. The CEO communicated to the council following that incident that this was indeed the action he took in response to the breach of the confidentiality in that incident. This proves a new policy such as this proposed is not necessary. All portions of the existing laws and regulations covered the incident, and the action of the CEO was bound to take. This new policy adds nothing to those existing laws and portions of the Act. The fact that stated confidential items may be in the realm of land transactions or tenders makes no difference.
30 seconds, councillor.
Can I get an extension just to finish?
Oh, hopefully not. Yes, so move Councillor Ree, seconded Councillor Spagnola. Just a show of hands for an extension. Councillors, can we just... okay, well, it'll take longer if I have to do a count, councillors. Can we just have a vote? That's unanimous. Thanks, councillors.
It's not much longer. This new policy adds nothing to those existing laws and portions of the Act. The fact that stated confidential items may be in the realm of land transaction or tenders makes no difference, as when deemed and set as confidential by the CEO, that is the status they hold. What in fact was needed was not another policy, but training for all city staff in the appropriate application of the already existing laws and policies. I implore you to vote this item down, as it is a Sir Humphrey Appleby writ large. It's not needed and it has no value to add to existing laws and portions of the Act. If they are not being enforced by the CEO and his senior staff, then a policy isn't needed. Rather, a review of staff and management practices is needed. Pass this policy, and in my view, you are passing question on the CEO and his ability to maintain confidentiality and to apply laws and regulations already in place, and, as I have said, he has previously enforced. Trust me, that the initial council resolution...
Sorry, councillor. What's your point of order, councillor Caddy?
I think that needs to be retracted. I don't think the councillor can imply that a vote for this bears any relationship to any confidence we might have in the CEO.
Yeah.
I think to suggest otherwise is
misleading. I think it might be wise, and councillor, I might remind you that council requested this.
Correct, point retracted. Pass this policy, and in my view, you are passing question on the CEO and his inability to manage...
You retracted it and then reset it.
Trust me, the initial council resolution was never intended to take this pathway.
The point of order was that you're passing dispersions on the CEO.
I retracted that.
Okay, but then
and
you repeated it.
I'm not passing any comment on the CEO. I'm suggesting to elected members that by passing this policy, They are not supporting their CEO.
That is my point of order.
Who has previously
Councillor,
used
Councillor,
the
please,
laws and...
Councillor, please listen. Take a seat for a second and have a listen.
Yep.
You are saying, you are directing council right now and saying if they vote for this item, they are voting, saying that they don't have confidence in the CEO for confidentiality. And
No.
the point of order
Well,
has been... that is exactly what you're saying, and you retracted it and then you repeated it twice.
Okay, well...
I'm suggesting you just retract it and move on.
That is not what I'm suggesting.
Okay, then move on and leave those two lines out.
I'm suggesting that you support the CEO, you support the Local Government Act, the WA laws, and you vote this policy down as it is unnecessary.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this? Councillor Ree?
Thank you. As the person that actually suggested that we have a confidentiality policy to start with and put up a motion at the beginning of the year that's taken a long time to get to the table.
Just to clarify, I think it was Councillor Caddy who moved the motion. Just clarifying.
I put up a motion
Okay,
about
I'm just clarifying
but
that.
it doesn't matter,
Yeah,
my motions
that's all right,
disappear
points.
on a regular basis. I can say that, I can bring the evidence if you need it. I am still concerned, and I can give you a lot of evidence about things that are so-called confidential, and I won't name names or anything, Councillor Caddy, nothing. But that
Councillor, I think, I'm not sure where you're going with that, but you might want to retract that as well, I would
Well, I
suggest.
retract it in the sense that I wasn't going to be specific to anything.
But you were very specific. You looked and called out a councillor.
No, I retract it.
Good idea. Thank you. Continue.
But I've got files if anyone wants to read them. I think that confidentiality is actually a serious thing. If you fill out a form, if you do something, and it's only supposed to know that person, then ends up in the media, there's something seriously wrong. Yes, I take the point of Councillor Lagan. Yes, it should be a management issue, but around the table, that's not our job to delve in management, so we can't interfere. However, that is the whole reason we have policies, which I wonder why we have policies, because sometimes they're selectively used and I don't know what happens if you don't use them.
Again, Councillor, just
Nothing.
be careful where you're heading.
Well, I'm just saying, that's why I'd like it more succinct. One of the things under the Local Government Act, it says the confidentiality of a... what I meant...
And it's only early.
I know. What I meant to do, I was going to hold it over because I don't think that it's addressing all these issues, but I've already spoken, so I can't. But I could still put that because it's up to you as a presiding member.
To hold it over.
Yes.
I'm happy if you'd like to discuss this in further detail.
The issues that
I'm happy to put a procedural. If you'd like,
Yes,
if you don't
I'd
think
like
it
to put a
addresses the issues,
procedural
we can
because
put
I
it. Is
don't
there a
think it
seconder for the
addresses
procedural to
every
hold
issue.
this over to the next council meeting? Seconder, Councillor Sandri. We'll go to the vote. It's a procedural to hold over to the next council meeting. Gives you 2 weeks to work on it. Well, you can certainly have your issues addressed, yes. And we're just missing Councillor Proud and Sergeant Proud. Councillor Proud, thank you. That is carried, and that will be held over. Let's go. So we have Councillors Farrelly, Ferrante, Hatton, Lagan, Migdale, Perkov, Ree, Sandri, Spagnolo, Thornton and myself. For and against Councillor Boothman, Caddy, Proud and Sargent. And when it comes back in 2 weeks, Councillor Lagan, the short version. Thanks. We'll now go to item 12.2 GOV2, which is the Election Policy Review 2020. There's an alt rec on the memo. Councillor Migdale.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I will hand this over to Councillor...
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, I hate to interrupt. My apologies, Councillor Migdale. I thought we were going to Councillor Caddy just did pull out 12.2 GOV2. I believe my maths are 333 before 355.
Sorry, I did read that one. I've read the wrong number if I've done that. So it's 12.2 GOV2, Election Policy Review. Is that the one I think I called that, but I think I said 355. Apologies. So it's the one on 333. But is Councillor Migdale just, will move the committee recommendation with the memo with the alt rec?
No, yep.
Yes.
I will be moving that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that one? Councillor Caddy. So this was only pulled out. There was a memo with a slight change, and that's why it had to come up. Is there anyone opposed to that? Councillor Ree, you're opposed? Yep. Councillor Migdale?
Nothing further.
Councillor Caddy?
Look, again, this was heavily debated at committee. The committee recommendation, I think, was unanimous or very close to. The change that was put forward in the white paper is very minor. They're administrative changes. I don't understand why we need to discuss this again.
Well, let's find out. Councillor Ree.
Thank you. A couple of things which I have to go through my memory banks of Councillor Ferranti and his comments about some of the elections which we didn't get back to again. I don't know if some of those things have actually been addressed in the caretaker policy or with regard to election signage. But what I'm concerned is that with some of these issues where it's got the page 339 with 10 metres of the intersection, etc., that with that is or isn't a public health risk, how long do they have to sit there before they're acted upon? Because it seemed to have been a little bit selective at the last election, and actually about three elections, not just local government. I mean local, state.
Let's deal with this actual item, which is about the policy review, not about you're talking about officers acting during an election. I'm sure you can get that information offline. Is there something with the policy that you have an issue with you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, well, that's my point. Under elections must not be placed or affixed. Should we not add how long it takes to get them removed? What do you take to get it removed?
Well, I would say that would be a normal management policy within the city on dealing with signage.
Well, it doesn't seem
Mr.
to
Quirk,
be
can you
addressed
give?
in here.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be. It'd just be a management practice. Mr. Quirk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I can confirm that depending on the public safety risk, that will dictate the turnaround time for rangers to remove the signage. So that is a management practice as opposed to a policy.
And if I can add on to that and say, as a candidate in the last election, they were onto it. Trust me, Councillor Ree.
Thank you. I just don't know whether it should be in this policy that a time frame, but I can understand the comments by Mr. Quirk. But the other thing is that when your signs are deliberately, shall we say fictitiously, whatever word we might have used.
Councillor, I think you're going way off topic here with the policy.
No. But I mean, some signs were moved from where they were legally to a place they were illegally, and then.
That's not a City of Stirling. If you believe someone's touched your property, then that's a police matter.
No.
Yes.
No, you're not listening. If they go from a place that the City of Stirling allows to a City of Stirling place that's not allowed, and then the city takes them away, and then the city can fine you or impound you or court when you didn't put them there to start with. I think it's the malicious intent.
That's nothing to do with this policy, Councillor.
Well, I'm saying maybe it should. That's my point.
Okay. But the City of Stirling, I can answer on behalf of Mr. Quirk, the City of Stirling cannot enact police matters. If you believe someone is going out in the middle of the night and stealing your property and moving it, that is a police matter. It's not a policy.
I know that, but however, if your sign has been put on a place that's inappropriate, you should have a right of mediation or to say something like, if I know the rules, I wouldn't have put it there. And I just think that that's not caught up enough in the policy.
Okay.
But I'm happy to put it to the test.
Point taken. Thanks, Councillor. If there's no one else who wishes to speak to this, I'll go to Councillor Migdale to close debate.
Nothing further.
Thank you, and I will put that item. If you can go to the vote, please, councillors. Let's focus. Let's get these done. Councillor Ree. Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you. Your microphone's on, Councillor. That might be why. Item 12.2 GOV3 Elected Member Policies Review 2020. This is only pulled out for an absolute majority vote. Page 355. Councillor Migdale.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I will move the committee's recommendation, please.
And a seconder for that motion, please. Councillor Spagnolo. Is anyone opposed? Councillor Ree. Councillor Migdale.
Nothing at this time.
Councillor Spagnolo.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor. Nothing at this stage.
And Councillor Ree.
Yeah, I'd just like to, I realise the reporting was difficult, but I did say at committee that the mayor's car to be excluded. And so, therefore, one would assume that on page 356, that would have been there, because I did put that forward. but it didn't make the minutes.
There was no seconder, councillor, that's why it didn't, there was no support, so it was just part of your debate.
I do believe previously that under our standing orders, even if there's no seconder, it's actually recorded in the minutes.
Yeah, I'll just check with the Manager of Governance.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, so that's your answer, councillor. It was only because it wasn't a motion. It was, the motion lapsed, so it just formed part of the debate.
And I do recall that being written, but anyway, I'll go through my standing orders for that one. With page 385, where we've got the CPD points and attendance at different things.
Yep.
Is it wise, not wise, think of another adjective, is it logical to put it in here when we've still got COVID, when we still don't know people are going away, when I believe at the last North Zone meeting, Welga did put forward, were going to put forward to State Council and to Parliament about prior recognition of learning and everything else. So if we approve this now and they change it, does it come back to Council to be changed again?
Yeah, I'm not sure where you're getting, but if you're talking about should there be yeah, it was relaxed, but the allowance, you still have to do the training. There's no relaxing from Walga or from the state government. So the timeframes and the CPD points, there's still been plenty of opportunities and they can all be done online.
So my apologies, you weren't at that meeting, but it was about people had prior learning, and some of the councils that are smaller said the cost of it all, that they should accept the prior learning. And my point is, if that comes in, does this policy have to come back to Council to be changed, or should we not
Yes, well,
add a bit in?
Well, as someone who sits on State Council, I've not seen anything being progressed or discussed there, and there's no intent, as far as I'm aware, that there will be any prior learning. Indeed, this council would be a good example of that, in the fact the Minister has made it clear that everyone will do training, and many of the councillors around this table have tertiary qualifications well above it.
I'm aware of that, but Councillor Lagan did put up additional comments at the last North Zone, and one of them was about prior learning, which was approved. So I'd assume that did actually go to State Council, but
Haven't seen or heard of it. But I can certainly guarantee, look, if it came up and there was exemptions or RPL, then if that needed to affect a change in this policy, it could be done at a later stage. Councillor Proud?
With respect, the Welga website highlights recognition of prior learning. If it's within the last 5 years, that training module is exempted. And I know of one councillor south of the river that had 3 of those modules accepted because they did the training. They've already done the training.
All right. Thanks, councillor. In my experience, it would take longer to go through the RPL process than to do the course. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this item? If not, I'll go to Councillor Migdale to close debate.
Nothing further, thank you.
Thanks. I'll put that to the vote, councillors. Thank you. And that is all councillors for except Councillor Ree, who is against, and that motion is carried. We'll now go on to item 12.2.9.3, Strategic Direction Mount Lawley. Noting this is a confidential agenda item, Councillor Sowndry has pulled it out. Would you like it held over to the to be behind closed doors?
If I may hold it over to confidential, that would be preferable. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's do that. All right, councillors, I just have received also a disclosure from Councillor Perkoff, 12.29.1 for the naming request of Parks and Reserves impartial, as the requester is known to himself. So I'll just put that through. Before we go to the balance of reports, Councillor Migdale, would you like to move the balance of reports with the exception of 12.2.9.3, the strategic direction of Mount Lawley, which will be dealt with later on in confidential? Yes?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I will move the balance of reports with the exemption of 12.2.9.3, which we'll deal with later on.
Councillor Sargent, second that. I will now put that, councillors. Is it? Councillor Spagnola and Boothman, please. Councillor Boothman. Yes. Kicking back. Good. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Members of the gallery and those at home, please be advised that the remainder of the Community and Resource Committee recommendations have been adopted by exception resolution. Councillors will now go on to direct to council reports. Item 13, we've got a 13.1, the new lease to Real Support Options Proprietary Limited over a portion of the Stirling Leisure Centre's Herb Graham Mirrabooka at lot 9000, house number 38, Ashbury Crescent, Mirrabooka, room 10, on page 419. Councillor Sargent, your motion.
Moving the recommendation on page 420.
Councillor Boothman seconded. Is there anyone opposed? I'll put that to the vote, please, councillors. Have a look at your buttons, councillors. Councillor Ree. Thank you. That is unanimous. We've got item 13.2, schedule of accounts for period 4th ending 31 October 2020 on page 424. Councillor Sargent.
Moving the recommendation on page 424.
Thank you. And Councillor Caddy. Second. Is there anyone opposed? No. Just your question? Yeah, I'll take a question if it's just a quick one.
Just a quick question. On page 426, our sustainability implications, I would have thought they would at least have a comment under economic. Thanks.
Thanks, councillor. Noted. And we'll put that to the vote, please. Councillor Migdale. That is unanimous. Thanks, councillors. Item 13.3, the monthly statement of financial activity for the month ending 31st October 2020. Councillor Sargent.
Moving the recommendation on 435.
Councillor Ferrante. Oh, that was a surprise. There you go. As seconded. Is there anyone opposed? If not, I'll put that. Oh, wow, that was quick. That is unanimous. Well done. Yes. Item 13.4, Business Support Initiative, reduction, refund of verge bonds and verge permits on 463. Councillors. Councillor Sandri.
Happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Ree, second. Is there anyone opposed? Councillor Hatton, are you opposed? Or? No. Okay. There's no one opposed? Okay, we'll put that to the vote, please. Oh, we're doing well then. Councillor Thornton and Farrelly, please. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to motions of which previous notice... I'll try that again. Motions of which previous notice has been given. Item 14.1, a notice of motion from Councillor Karen Caddy on glyphosate reduction program. Councillor Caddy.
Thank you. I want to move... Sorry, I have to wait for council...
Oh, sorry, councillors. Yep. Councillor Ferrante has declared an interest and has to leave. Sorry, Councillor Ferrante, I should have been on. Noting that Councillor Ferrante has now left the chamber, Councillor Caddy, sorry about that.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to move the officer's suggested alternative recommendation that's on page 476 of the report.
Thank you. Councillor Migdale has seconded that for you.
Sorry, 78.
On 78?
478.
The suggested alt rec. Councillor Migdale has seconded that. Is there anyone opposed? If not, I'll take a question if it's just a question.
Yes, please. As I alluded to earlier, why is it the whole report regarding glyphosate that came to council years ago in here?
Glyphosate. It's glyphosate, and this is Councillor Caddy's motion. So let's. Okay. So let's put that to the vote. Okay. So we're leaving. Councillor Lagan. Stop distracting him, everyone. Let him vote. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We can have Councillor Ferrante asked back into the chamber. And we'll now go... He's done a runner. We're just, yeah, that's all right. Mr. Littleton's gone to look for him. He wasn't there. We can probably get started on this one. I think we can still start. We'll go to item 14, councillors. Item 14.2, notice of motion from Councillor Felicity Farrelly on the safe pedestrian crossings of the Esplanade in Scarborough. Councillor Farrelly, your motion.
I'll hold the motion that says notice of motion recommendations on page 480. Put that one forward.
Thank you. And Councillor Caddy is seconding that. May I ask a question with your indulgence, councillors?
Right. This is
No,
this is different to the one I sent through today. This is the notice of motion regarding Scarborough Beach front, the
the safe Esplanade crossing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my question, and it may be through the officer, the director first. It was only, I actually think it's a really good motion. My question is, having been down there again on the weekend, just having a look, further north and south, there's also pedestrian access ways that, for example, from the pool through to Luna Shopping Centre, that actually have walkways between the speed bumps. So they're actually designated as a walkway. They have the bumps along the road at the start, etc. But by limiting it to just these, does it create confusion by not treating those other ones? Would people then not walk on them expecting them to be? Mr. Richmond.
I think what will make them the two types of crossings completely different is that one will have the line marking that will clearly delineate it, plus signage to go with it, whereas the other crossings are basically just effectively they're speed humps that coincide with a pedestrian crossing location.
Pedestrian crossing,
but it
yes.
doesn't have those other crossings don't have priority for pedestrians over vehicles.
Okay. I'll leave it at that. Councillor Farrelly can keep pushing. Should get those. Okay. Good. I will put that to the vote then. Thank you. That is unanimous. I'll now go to item 14.3, a notice of motion from Councillor Felicity Farrelly, request to cease works on the Manning, Deanmore and Moreland roads on page 485. Councillor Farrelly.
In regard to this one, there is an amendment to the alternative recommendation.
Yep.
And, you've got it up there, that the city proceeds with the construction works and proposed road safety audit of stage 3 of the Moreland Street Bicycle Boulevard, which is basically Deanmore Road and then up to Manning Road to the end of Filburn, past Filburn, I should say, to the West Coast Highway. That as part of the road safety audit, the following intersections, the amendment is that as part of the road safety audit, the following intersections be reviewed and that any action required to improve safety be implemented. One is, or A is Deanmore and Moreland intersection, B Deanmore and Manning, and C Manning and Elgar. The streets, and the information behind indicates that the recent design of both Deanmore Road and Manning Street in the western edge of North Scarborough, I particularly have had a lot of residents and regular commuters concerned about the safety.
Mr.
I
Mayor,
understand
did you get a seconder? Sounds like she's entering into debate.
Oh, sorry.
I know.
Yeah, I am.
No,
My
no,
apologies.
that's all right. No, I'm happy. She's just reading. She's only reading the motion. I'm happy with this.
Well, anyway, of the secondary road, it's important that the city investigates these concerns as part of the road safety audit.
Yeah, and the intent's clear. That's fine. Councillor Caddy, you're seconding. You'll allow a quick question.
Just for clarity, so do we normally do road safety audits on works that we've done or for future works? Just in my mind. Thank you.
Sure, Ms Littleton.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the question. Look, we do road safety audits, particularly when we're looking at a traffic management treatment for a safe, active street, such as Moreland Street, we actually do conduct road safety audits of the treatments once they're completed. The Safe Active Streets is a trial, is a pilot program, and it's really important, given we are substantially changing the environment for vehicles, and we want to seek a really low-speed environment. It is important that we actually achieve the outcomes and the objectives of the Safe Active Street program.
Thanks. Good. No. Good. Thank you. And just Mylan's opposed. Good. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Now going to item 14.4, a notice of motion, Councillor Elizabeth Ree, on osprey breeding and survival.
Yes, please. Refer to the officer's alternative recommendation on page 500 that the City writes the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attraction seeking feedback on the following: whether there are any current issues facing osprey breeding grounds within the City of Stirling and their survival along the coastline, if a potential increase in development is expected to impact upon their ability to breed and survive, and the measures that have been or can be taken to ensure the survival of their species within the City of Stirling.
Thanks, councillor. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Farrelly. Anyone opposed? And I'll go to the vote then, councillors. I seem to spend most of my time writing letters to ministers these days. All right, we're almost there. One more. Thank you. Who are we missing? Oh, it was me. I was waiting. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. All right, that takes us to item 15, notice of motion for consideration at the next meeting. Councillors, I would like to submit some, if I can start. I don't believe I do. I can get confirmation from the Manager of Governance.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, you are correct.
I am correct. Say that again. Thanks. Okay. My motion is that a report be presented to a future Planning and Development Committee meeting to demonstrate Council's commitment to reconciliation by renaming the main street through the Stirling City Centre either after a Whadjuk Noongar elder or a Noongar word reflective of the significance of this road. And the reason is the Stevenson Avenue project is now fully funded and under construction. The intent of the Stevenson Avenue project has always been to consider a different name. The Stirling City Centre has been the #1 priority for over a decade, and Stevenson Avenue is a main road unlocking this land potential and future CBD developments. Celebrating Stirling's rich Aboriginal history and culture by renaming the main road will go towards demonstrating Council's strong commitment to reconciliation and serve as a constant reminder that reconciliation is an ongoing process for all in the community. The second one I would like to submit is that a report be presented to a future Community and Resource Committee meeting to review the Community Development Funding Policy to consider multi-year funding for signature events that align with the City's Strategic Community Plan. And the reason is to ensure continuity of support to key partners hosting signature events, such as NAIDOC, that deliver key outcomes for the City of Stirling community that are aligned to the City's Strategic Community Plan. They shouldn't have to compete for those funds. Anyone else? Councillor Ree.
Yes, the officers already have it, and I thank the directors for assisting me in this little motion, notice of motion. The City officers investigate the provision of a sports stadium, museum and music performing arts venue as part of the community infrastructure needs and assessment being undertaken for the Stirling City Centre in the 2021-22 financial year.
Thank you. Councillor Boothman.
Do you want me to read it all out? It's fairly lengthy, this one. Okay. That council write to the Premier of the State Government and all state and federal government politicians whose electorate covers the City of Stirling, registering concern regarding the lack of development and attention to issues within the Mirrabooka Regional Centre by the State Government. The principal concerns being, number one, the State Government has created an issue relating to inadequate parking provision and lack of transport options for its employees and customers attending the government agencies in the Mirrabooka Regional Centre as follows. A. Some 2 years ago, the government agencies represented in the Mirrabooka area moved from Mirrabooka House on Sudbury Road to a new building at 5 Milldale Way, Mirrabooka. Despite the office complex housing several hundred employees, there is no on-site parking for general employees, and despite development conditions requiring the provision of parking for customers attending the various agencies, has continually failed to adhere to the requirements to allow access to the available parking on site, which appears inadequate. The resultant concern is that numerous vehicles are illegally parking every working day on vacant land around the area, driving over and damaging footpaths and generally causing the area to look a shambles, and in addition causing issues and concerns for surrounding business. And B, despite numerous meetings of various government representatives and continued support from the member for Mirrabooka, there's been a failure to act or to take responsibility for these issues on the part of the government. The motion 2, that the City of Stirling has moved substantially to address government requirements for infill development in accordance with the Perth Peel 2050 plan. However, the state government, being the owner of the majority of vacant land within the Mirrabooka Regional Centre, has failed to act proactively to develop or consider appropriate options for their land, which could significantly address this plan by providing mixed-use development, including a range of medium and higher density housing options, including affordable housing. A comment on this is that the previous state governments worked with the city and federal government to provide some limited housing, but nothing along these lines has eventuated in the last 4 years or more. Despite the area meeting all of the criteria nominated in the Perth Peel plan, despite the area being a major focus of the state government when the Max Light Rail proposal was promoted by a previous state government, it appears this area has been overlooked while our suburban sprawl continues to decimate virgin bushland. And I did have an extract there from the Perth Peel plan, which identifies the provisions I've related to. Thank you.
The intent is clear. Councillor Lagan, you indicated.
Yes, notice of motion for an upcoming council. I think we've got it. That a report be presented at the Community Resource Committee meeting to be held on the 16th of February 2020 on the viability of the city joining the RE100 movement. The reason for the notice of motion is a number of municipalities around the world have already joined this initiative, and the investigation of inclusion by the city may be beneficial to all ratepayers within the city and may cause reduction in overall energy usage and costs.
Thanks, Councillor. Good. Setting ourselves up for a busy year next year. Good. No other indications? If not, we'll go to item 16, which is questions by members of which due notice has been given. We have question 16.1 on 502 and 16.2 on 503 from Councillor Elizabeth Ree. Councillor Ree?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering on 16.1, my question was, what was the expenditure on road resurfacing and road construction and the budget, which is 3 items.
Yep.
But on the paperwork, I don't have them. So it didn't answer my question.
So you'd like more detail?
So do we send it back just for the question to be answered?
Yes.
Can the question be answered in the next council?
Yes. Yep. And I'll get Mr. Gearmoss to follow up with you and find out the intent so it's clear. Item 17, new business of an urgent nature. I have nil. Item 18, matters behind closed doors. Councillors, can I have a mover and a seconder to go behind closed doors? Councillor Lagan, seconded Councillor Farrelly. Just a quick show of hands, councillors, and then that is unanimous. We'll go behind closed doors. Thanks.